Good evening again, church. It's good to see everyone here. We are doing our Proverbs lessons, and I hope that you have enjoyed doing these. I know Vicky said she's really enjoyed them, and so it's good to hear that. But we're on the 17th day, so we are in Proverbs chapter 17 this afternoon, this evening. And so what we've seen is at the beginning, we talked about the difference between wisdom and folly, and how the beginning or the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. A few chapters later, we saw the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And we've seen almost in, well, not every chapter, but in many of the chapters, that the fear of the Lord is the starting point of all wisdom. And so we talked about the idea of wisdom with the young man between the adulteress and the fornicator, and so the warning of that early on in the Proverbs, and we've moved from there to more everyday type of Proverbs, nuggets of truth for us to listen to and to take to heart as we go through our life. And so many of these have a lot to do with how we interact in our business dealings, how we interact in our family dealings, and how we interact just in life as well. And so we'll see that all this evening. Chapter 7 of Proverbs. Better is a dry morsel with a house full of feasting. Better is a dry morsel with quiet than a house full of feasting with strife. A servant who deals wisely will rule over a son who acts shamefully, and will share the inheritance as one of the brothers. The crucible is for silver, and the furnace is for gold, and the Lord tests hearts. This one has come up a few times for us, and we also look in Malachi a lot and see the way that we are tested and tried. And here we see the Lord tests our hearts sometimes through difficult situations. Verse 4 says, An evildoer listens to wicked lips, and a liar gives ear to a mischievous tongue. Whoever mocks the poor insults his maker. He who is glad at calamity will not go unpunished. And so again, those who are wrongdoers are an insult to our Heavenly Father. I love this one. Grandchildren are a crown of the aged, and the glory of children is their fathers. That should be one that's highlighted in my Bible, because I'm about to have a grandchild. So I'm looking forward to that. And hopefully I am a glory to my children. They are definitely a glory to me. Fine speech is not becoming to a fool. Still less is false speech to a prince. And so those who are foolish cannot speak finely, and false speech brings out troubled times. A bribe is like a magic stone in the eyes of the one who gives it. Whoever he turns, he prospers, or wherever he turns, he prospers. And so the one who gives bribes is often thinking things are really good until they get caught at that, and their world comes tumbling down. Whoever covers an offense seeks love, but he who repeats a matter separates close friends. So be willing to make amends. A rebuke goes deeper into a man of understanding than 100 blows into a fool. And that's a very ominous one. We can understand a rebuke, but some people think you have to force something into somebody, but that's not necessarily the case. An evil man seeks only rebellion, and a cruel messenger will be sent against him. Let a man meet a she-bear robbed of her cubs rather than a fool in his folly. I don't know if you've ever seen a bear, but bears by themselves aren't necessarily that mean. But if you ever come between a bear and its cub, then you better be careful, because that bear is going to come after you. And this one says that the she-bear was robbed of her cubs, so that's even more of an angry bear. And we know bears can tear you up. And so he says better to do that than to listen to a fool in his folly. If anyone returns evil for good, evil will not depart from his house. So do good unto others. The beginning of strife is like letting out water, so quit before the quarrel breaks out. The beginning of strife is like letting out water. That's kind of like the little crack in the dam. Once you have a little crack, it's soon going to burst open, and the whole thing's going to fall apart. He who justifies the wicked and he who condemns the righteous are both alike an abomination to the Lord. The New Testament says that in the last days, people will call good evil and evil good. And this verse, this Proverbs, kind of telling us the same thing. Why should a fool have money in his hand to buy wisdom when he has no sense? One who lacks sense gives a pledge and puts up security in the presence of his neighbor. Whoever loves transgressions loves strife. He who makes his door high seeks destruction. So here we see the idea of, we're going back just a verse or two, but we're going back to the idea of putting up security for somebody else. Over and over, the Proverbs tell us not to do that. Verse 20 says, a man of crooked heart does not discover good, and one who with a dishonest tongue falls into calamity. So the crooked heart will not discover good and have calamity. He who sires a fool gets himself sorrow, and the father of a fool has no joy. I don't think you just are born a fool. I think that often happens with how you were raised. And I think the last proverb that we looked at, the one that says, better to discipline a child than to let him go into folly is a good one to think about in conjunction with that proverb. A joyful heart is good medicine, but a crushed spirit dries up the bones. It's funny, we just talked about joy in our psalm lesson here as well. When we have joy, we can lift ourselves up and enjoy life a little bit. But a crushed spirit dries you up. And so we need to be careful that we don't remain crushed, that we find the joy of the Lord. The wicked accepts a bribe in secret to pervert the ways of justice. The discerning sets his face towards wisdom, but the eyes of a fool are on the ends of the earth. And so again, we see here the idea of looking at wisdom instead of folly. A foolish man is a grief to his father and bitterness to her who bore him. So again, over and over in this book, this chapter of Proverbs, we need to see that we need to be wise. And that wisdom is often by starting out listening to our parents' wisdom. To impose a fine on a righteous man is not good, not to strike the noble for their uprightness. Whoever restrains his words has knowledge, and he who has a cool spirit is a man of understanding. We've talked about that a few times. It's better to be quiet and make everyone think you are foolish than to open your mouth and prove it right. And so I've used that a few times with these Proverbs because they say that over and over again. Even a fool who keeps silent is considered wise. When he closes his lips, he is deemed intelligent. Well, there we go. I should have finished that one first before I went out and said what I just said. Well, I hope that you're enjoying these Proverbs. This is a lot of good nuggets of truth for us to rely upon and to look at. And I hope to see you again tomorrow with our next proverb. You have a great day.